We don't want the process to be hijacked by anybody who has a particular agenda. So we would have to, we have a lot of expertise out there, and a lot of very competent people. We have to somehow make sure council is in the end the overseer for the public. That's what the public expects of us, and that's why there's an election. I think this would be great if it could become to a high degree citizen-led, but it also absolutely has to remain as an objective investigation with somebody who doesn't have a particularly staked out position in one way or another, because that would be the death knell of it. If a group with a particular staked out position came to control the process, it would lose all validity very, very quickly, and that would be unfortunate. So if we can set up a process where we can ensure that the citizens involved are representative of the community at large, and not there with any particular cross to bear or axe to grind, but simply there to make sure that the best possible process takes place, I think that would be fabulous. I do want to mention a couple of things also. I think whoever carries out this process in whatever manner, and as Haji Jurnia mentioned, the importance of providing rich information and quote education, if you would, is critical. There are a lot of people in Saanich who would be interested, I think, who have limited background and limited access to information in this area. And they are, from talking to people, very, very keen to get a lot of information on what the art of the possible is. And so somehow there has to be a process that gets that information out as broadly as possible and as completely as possible. And finally, when it talks in here, and I think as an overview of ideas, this is good. I would agree with Councillor Bryce. I'd like to see this referred back to City Spaces to say, how can we get this ideal citizen process going? What would be the best way to do it? But in terms of key messages, it is a Saanich-based initiative, but it's also looking at the region, and Saanich is part of that region. And I think somewhere we need a message is how well is the regional need for a vision and framework for the future being met? And if it isn't being met, what are the possibilities to accomplish that? When we are in a region such as this, there are really two things that have to happen. Some things are clearly regional in nature, there's no question. And you need to be able to set the vision and the framework for those things properly accomplished. And then, once you get that vision and that goal of where you intend to go, then it becomes a matter of putting the flesh on the bones. That could be done regionally, or it can be done locally, and there's an argument to be made that at the local, once you get to that stage, that the local level is more effective. These are all important things. Somehow I'd like to see that as a key message so that it's not missed at some point. I'm sure, though, that members of the public will bring it up as well. So I will move that this be referred back to City Spaces for the purpose of looking at how we could structure this as a citizen-led initiative. Thank you.
Second.
So there's the, finally we've got the motion and second for this. So just to recap on how we got here. We got here by the December 8th motion that was based on the ballot question that was put forward by Councillor Dermott to have staff go look at this. Staff went out to a consultant, and it's been in the hands of the consultant for somewhere up to 6 months. It's roughly 6 months since we were based on December 8th. And so now we're in motion for it to go back to the consultant for an undetermined amount of time, where we have a clear indication from the audience, and I think that we have to be a little bit larger than that, but based on the comments I've heard from the council already, that this should be citizen-led. I think a great opportunity for this is to do this through a committee of council, where citizens can be engaged and help develop this process going forward. So I just want to mention that once again, and now we'll continue the discussion on this motion. Councillor Haynes, you got your hand up.
It was your motion, Mike.
Should Pete go first?
Microphone, please.
Should Pete go first because it's his motion? Does the mover get the first statement?
Well, your hand was up and then
I did have my hand up, that's true.
his hand was up.
Did-
It was a delayed hand up, that's
Yeah.
why I addressed you first.
Okay, thank you. I had similar concerns as has been expressed here by my colleagues and members of the public when I first read this. I think it's well thought out for a study, but I don't think it's this study, because it missed the citizen engagement part. The citizens of Saanich aren't mentioned until audience, where it says residents, Saanich-based stakeholder groups. I thought they would have been involved ahead of this, and this has been confirmed tonight by hearing my colleagues speak. There has been time spent bringing this forward. I think there's a next step, which is actually a first step, to say, should there be citizen engagement? Should we agree on that as a council? What is the composition? What is the size? What are the terms of reference? What are the timelines? And then you can backstep a little bit and say, okay, what are the timelines for identifying composition, size, and terms of reference? And I don't think it need take that long to come up with a citizen-led committee that will be part of this process. I'd like to hear my colleagues' feedback on that.
Councillor Durbin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really don't see the consultant's work in any way as being wasted. If no matter who leads this process, they will have to go through terms of reference and so forth. And I think the outline here is really quite a good one and a very good start to that process. And so if this becomes some sort of citizen-led process, then this is a good starting point for it, and the work is valuable there. It's always a process that's going to have to be monitored and taken care of for the reasons that I mentioned before. I think there are lots of people out there in this industry who would do an incredible job with lots of experience, and that would, I think, bring greater involvement and greater ownership on the part of the citizens at large. That's a hugely possibly good thing. The one caveat, of course, being that you want to really look carefully and make sure that this doesn't get hijacked by a particular interest group or any particular interest group. Beyond that, you could do it with a council committee, but that's getting close to an in-house thing again, and is probably less effective in getting the involvement as the citizen-led process. Thank you.
Councillor Murdoch and then Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we're all saying the same thing. When I read the overall approach and saw that council was meant to be the project steering committee, I thought, well, that's not quite the way we put it. I think any of us, when we spoke about this through November and subsequently, I think we heard resoundingly 88% of the folks who voted on the question. They want council to fuel up the vote, but they didn't expect council to drive. It's the residents who are going to steer, and I think that we need to create the opportunity to do that. I think what the consultant has provided is a great sketch of what a process could be, but I think that there needs to be a citizen, and we're calling it a citizen-led committee, to give some structure to this. I think there will be some requirements gathering, some information sharing, and to inform what would be the most appropriate process. But in my view, I don't think any of us wants to be the architect behind that. I think we want to, as quickly as possible and as neatly as possible, hand that over to the residents who very clearly told us that they want an opportunity to have their say. So I see no harm in having that handed back to the consultant to give us some structure to it. Certainly in the realm of public participation, it is very common to have a citizen committee leading the process, and I'm sure that the consultant will provide us with some very good guidance on how that should take place. From that point on, I think it's up to them, and I look forward to, and by them I mean the residents, the citizens of Saanich to lead that process, and I look forward to seeing it unfold.
Question to our CAO, how much did this work cost?
I can't tell you that at this point. Sorry, we entered into a relatively small contract with City Spaces, so I can't tell you this is the first stage what the price has been at this point. I don't have that information.
Can you give us a rough idea of how much it cost based on, did we just do it open-ended or did they give us an idea? Have they billed us for this work?
No, I can tell you that the full contract anticipating what the work would be down the road that they've engaged for is an amount up to $14,000 if we proceeded on the basis of the terms of reference that I provided at this time.
So it seems like we spent quite a lot of money in this already. I keep hearing the terms from my fellow councillors of Citizens Committee. A committee of council I don't think would cost us anything to take us forward and figure out what our next step would need to be. We just want to raise that again and again. I'm wondering if council has, any member of council has any interest in that governance committee at all that I mentioned in my inaugural speech. I'm not seeing any interest in it. Councillor Brownoff and then Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I agree that we need a citizens committee, but we also need some sort of consultant to help coordinate the work, similar to what we have down with the sewage committee, where we have Amanda, who coordinates the meetings and whatnot. I just want to go back to some things that I think have to be addressed. There was a comment from Hashi that I totally agree with under the key messages. Identify issues, and it says in gaps, and I think it should say issues, gaps, challenges, and opportunities. I think that needs to be part of key messaging. On the next page, the three topic areas, one that's missing, I think, and maybe I'm just not reading it right, is currently how many fee-for-services we have. It talks about relationships, but that doesn't talk about revenue or contracts we have. And then I was concerned about how you would get all these different stakeholders together. And what I was thinking of is how we did it around the WHO project. We actually had roundtables, or we had specific meetings with specific groups. So you'd have the business community coming together and you'd have this discussion, you'd have community associations, you'd have the development industry, maybe nonprofits. So somehow we want to ensure the greatest outreach to the greatest diverse populations. And with the WHO project, that's exactly what we did. We brought in different groups at different times, and we had some various working areas. I do believe it's about educating as well. I support the committee, citizens committee, but I do believe that you need to have someone other than, it can't be our staff, it shouldn't be us, it should be someone that could coordinate the whole process. I just heard our CEO say that the original contract was for $14,000. So I think it should go back to them to try and come up with how we would do that and what is the bigger, hiring, putting people on a committee. We're going to have to go through a process. We're going to have to advertise the committee. We're going to have to do all those sorts of things. So I think I'd like the consultant to come back with some of those concepts, how we would do that. One thing I really like is the speakers series. I think that's a real powerful part of what they're talking about. And yeah, I think those are my main comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. You talked about the CRD consultant. I just want to address that. There is a consultant at the CRD doing engagement. You referred to her as Amanda.
Yeah.
Her name is Amanda Gibbs. And CRD is spending funds on doing that. But there still is a committee of the sewage committee, the EPAC, as the citizens committee that works with that consultant. I was in those meetings and driving that process.
Mm-hmm.
So, given that we've spent $14,000 already, we don't really have enough answers, and we have to go back and spend more money to get more answers, I think I'd like to ask you a direct question. Are you interested in supporting my governance and cooperation standing committee?
Well, first of all, Mr. Mayor, I just want to go back to the 14,000. I didn't hear our CEO say that it's cost us that to date. I heard them say by the end of their contract, they put in a short term. So could we get clarification about that?
That's correct. The purpose of the report tonight was to try and gather feedback from council so that when we proceed to the next iteration of this report, we can bring you back something that reflects the values and the recommendations coming from council. I have engaged City Spaces, Linda Allen and Alison Halkirk to help me with this project and move it forward. Tonight's part of the project is to give you something in terms of a general framework and try and get feedback from council that we can continue to work over the summer and bring you back something in terms of format which reflects the kind of comments and the process you would like to see moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I support any sort of committee you're interested in, but when we went out to the community, we did say it was going to be a citizen-led process, and I support that, but there's going to have to be some sort of coordinator or somebody to be able to work with the citizen groups, similar to what we have down on the sewage committee. I don't think our staff should be doing it. We need somebody as well to help the citizen committee, because the citizens committee will start from square one, and we just need someone to help coordinate it. I think we need to ask the consultants to come back and tell us how they think that could happen.
All right. Why do you think this consultant couldn't work with a committee of council? Consultants work with other committees of council. We hear from them all the time.
Well, no, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, though, is that we made a commitment during the election that it would be a citizen-led committee, that the citizens will need some sort of support.
All right, so I'm going to move on the conversation here, but I'm going to say one last time that I did put the horse before the cart based on the ballot question, a governance and cooperation standing committee to handle these kinds of items that has come forward now. And I'm going to ask you, again politely, do you have an interest in supporting this committee?
Mr. Mayor, could we be on the motion, please?
Councilor
I
Brown?
already answered it, Mr. Mayor. I said I support any committee you bring forward, but the motion on the floor is not that. And what we went out in the election with was that it would be a citizen-led committee.
Next on the speaker list, Councilor Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could please request that the motion as proposed be read out before I make my remarks. Sorry, Ms. Dupas.
To our clerk.
The motion is that the item be referred back to City Spaces for the consultant to take a look at how we can structure this as a citizen-led initiative.
Thank you. I'm going to speak against the motion, not because I'm against the idea of having citizen-led things. I think that's exactly what we need. I am more interested in the model that our mayor has put forward. I think the idea of having citizens get together in an advisory panel situation, much like the CRD Sewage East Side Committee did, where we asked for an advisory committee. I think that the consultants' work is a great part of that, but I think rather than send it back to them, I think we need to own it, and they're going to run it. I think the metaphor of my councillor to the left of me, Mr. Murdoch, said about fueling the boat is important. I don't really feel comfortable at this point handing it back to the consultant saying, please tell us how you think we should do it. I think that's where the advisory committee is the better way to go. We put out a call for people who want to advise us. I don't want to drive this boat. I want us to put out who are the best 10 to 15 people in the region who could help us create the terms of reference for a study. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. I can't imagine this is going to happen in the next 9 to 12 years. So I don't think we've got a process here that is taking us so far that we can't pause and go back and restart with those citizens. I think we have 4 years to get it right, and I don't want to go the route of sending it back to the consultant. I believe in the consultant's professional abilities. I like the idea of getting the residents, having a public hearing, whatever it's called, to get, sorry, maybe not a public hearing, I see the bullets on, of getting people to come and tell us what they want, not what the consultant thinks we want. The public hasn't been asked what they want in the governance review. We've been 6 months down the road and nobody's asked the public anything. And so we're going back to a consultant to ask us when it should be the general public telling us what they want. And so I would say I'm more in line with what the mayor suggested, strike an advisory committee that is an advisory committee, just like down at the CRD, rather than send it to the consultant and then come back to us. So I'll be voting against this, and if it fails, looking to suggest more in the line of an advisory committee that we would then advertise for ASAP.
Thank you. Councilor Berglund?
Thank you very much, Mayor. Just a couple of comments. There's no question during the election, I believe we all made the statement one way or the other, that this was going to be led by our community and by the citizens. And coming back, and it really does sound good. It sounds good, it sounds positive, it sounds open, and all those things. On the question of, I use the word amalgamation, some have indicated that 88% did not vote for amalgamation, they voted for governance. But amalgamation was the buzzword during the election. No matter how we worded it, I believe many of our residents believe that we would be looking at the pros and the cons of amalgamation. And I believe that part is much easier to address. We can have a citizens committee getting all the facts out, the pros and the cons and the ups and the downs. And at the end of the day, we can put it to a referendum and allow our people to vote on it. What becomes difficult in my mind is the governance and ways that our residents feel that Saanich needs to change in the way they govern. And on that, if I use the word, at the end of the day, it's going to be us that'll have to make that decision. And we might not agree with the citizens' report or all of it. And I think as we go out to our citizens, I believe their concerns, their thoughts, their views, they will cover a spectrum. And it won't be much like sewage. That's a bad example. But we're not going to get a clear consensus on what should be changed and what can be improved. There will be many ideas, and at the end of the day, I believe we are going to have to pick and choose as council. So I believe we're looking at two different areas, the governance of Saanich as a municipality, and the pros and the cons of amalgamation as some people might see it. Thank you.
Councilor Sanders?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be supporting the motion. I think it's, we've heard speakers here that have given us good information on what's missing from that. Ms. Harper told us at the beginning that the three topic areas were good, they're wide and they're broad. And we heard from Haji, and she also mentioned what was missing. It was the committee. And Haji about the challenges and the opportunities in Wicks and also about community. So I believe our question was that it would be community driven. But, you know, it's like everything. We all have our own expertises and we come with those skills, but there always needs to be professional, coordinated, keep it on track. It's going to take a year to do this project. So I do believe we need to send it back to the consultant to help, again, that with the roadmap and how that's going to work and how we're going to form that committee and let the citizens drive it and go through the steps that need to be done. So I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Any more speakers? Councilor Bryce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've all said in some form or another that we want a significant community engagement. How that moves and how that is coordinated seems to be where there's a difference of opinion as to how that best could happen. When this concept came up, it was a big concept. It wasn't a small issue. And certainly, even if we had spent $14,000, which we haven't, or $16,000, I think all of us knew that by the time we got through the whole process, this was potentially a much bigger project than something that's going to come in at $14,000. This is something to significantly look, as has been mentioned, at the entire way that we govern ourselves as a community. in respect of the people who are going to ask from the public to make a significant time contribution, we owe it to them to ensure that this process has a structure, has a support system. It's not some staff person doing it off the side of their desk. This is something that has to have a life of its own, because it will be a very interesting but wide-ranging project. And I think that we've got the basis of it here with a significant piece missing. And I think by sending it back to the consultants with this strong message that we want this to be citizen-driven, that we will have an opportunity to take a look at the next iteration of it. We will know when we've got it right. So far, we don't get that vibe. And when it comes back, there will be another opportunity for the public to respond, and they will help us know whether or not we've got it right. But I don't think this is the time to just sort of start off in some sort of unstructured form.
Thank you. Councillor Haynes?
Yes, this is a huge question. It could go on and on. So it would need to have a scope, it would need to have timelines, it would need to have terms of reference. Having listened to the debate so far, I'm not sure why we can't combine both these initiatives. Is it possible, for sure, to have the consultant continue? And I didn't hear that they've spent all the 14. I gathered that 14 was rolling forward. This might be $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. I don't know. But with this project, I'm not sure how the citizens themselves will keep the minutes, do the write-up, produce those things. On the advisory committees, I couldn't do that. I need Elizabeth there. She's my admin assistant. She makes this thing tick over, and I look after making sure the ideas are being groomed and presented. So I do believe there's a role for a professional staff around this. In response to the Mayor's question about his committee, it would be very useful if we had terms of reference or a description of what was meant by that. That would help guide my thinking tonight. But I'm also seeing that we're fairly close here, that what could come out of this would be close to what the Mayor may have been meaning, but in fact I don't really know what he meant. I never saw a terms of reference. However, is there an opportunity this evening to have the ability to enable a group of our citizens to come up with their suggestions and bring that forward in a few weeks? I don't know quite how we would do that. Maybe we can discuss it tonight. There are structures out there, the community associations, SCAN, there's experts in our community, as well as going back to consultant. And since I still have the mic, I just want to mention this. I wasn't entirely sure about reaching out, and I really have a high regard for people from Toronto, but we have some fabulous experts here on the West Coast on amalgamation, and I didn't really see the need to spend money on airfares and accommodations and honorariums to bring people from outside of BC. But that's just me thinking. I thought we had great expertise here. So those are the three things. Can we embrace citizens in this? With terms of reference, once they're all together, actually be very close to what the Mayor was meaning. And thirdly, I don't think we need to reach out to the University of Toronto for our speakers. I think we can go locally. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Let me answer your question. So the reason I have you put forward with the terms of reference is because of this very famous phrase from, I think here in the US, is of the people, by the people, and for the people. It should be a citizens-led process. It should be the committee that decides the terms of reference. I don't want to set the terms of reference for the committee. I have a general idea that I expressed in the inaugural address, and the idea would be to strike the committee and have the committee develop its terms of reference and have the committee ratify and move forward. It's a clear distinction from any of the committees that we have here already at SANAG. So that was my original intention. We keep talking about something that's led by citizens and a citizens committee. And here we have a perfect opportunity through an initiative that I put forward that embraces all of council. But I have to say, to date, Councillor Plant is the only councillor in this council that has asked me, other than Councillor Haynes, about these standing committees in my normal address. So it's not surprising there isn't much information on them because no councillors have reached out to me to ask these questions other than these two councillors. So we've had that basic discussion, but I'm still leaving it to the committee. I definitely would like to strike the committee. And I'm wondering, Councillor Haynes, if you'd like to put a motion forward an amendment forward to have this go to a standing committee for governance and cooperation, as I announced in my oral address.
I think that's to deal with the current motion, but leave our point.
The motion?
Well, I'm asking for an amendment, if you'd like to put a motion forward.
Well, I don't think I can actually do that. Can we have advice from staff? I think it's a step too far within this motion.